So welcome back, dear friends. Welcome to RAYfest, our first online festival celebrating women of spirit and welcoming you all from right around the world. Thank you so much for being with us. I am your host, Fatima Ashraf, and together with Saima Daya, we are the co-creators of the Ray of God. And for those of you who have been with us all day, I know you will have heard some of this before, but do bear with us. It's important for friends that are joining us first time of the day now, for us to share this with them again, or for the first time rather. So Ray seeks to share feminine spiritual wisdom to help realize God in all ways and to align with justice, truth, and beauty. The energetic state of the feminine is our guiding principle and holds our intention. And we believe that all genders hold the feminine and masculine within themselves. While we are women-led and women-centered, we welcome and encourage all genders to join us in a safe, inclusive space. We do not seek to present a voice of expertise. We see ourselves as travelers along the way and hoping that we are learning with each step. Our ideas are ever evolving, and we hope you will join us on this journey. The aim of this festival is to heal, harmonize, and challenge, and our contributors will be speaking to the broad theme of her space. This is how women create and claim or reclaim sacred and other spaces, both literally and through reshaping narratives and giving voice to their views and experience as they discover their power and agency as women. We are really blessed this weekend, really, to be welcoming a truly diverse, intergenerational, interspiritual cohort of incredible contributors, some of whom you've already met this morning and afternoon. Some of these are religious leaders, some are spiritual teachers, some are activists, academics, creatives, and so much more. So this really leads us into our closing contemplation with Elizabeth Anne Hin, and I would like to say a few words about this beautiful woman. And in fact, no words would really do sufficient justice. But Beth, as we call her, is a very dear friend to Ray, to Saima and I, to our teachers. And we're so glad that she's been with us all day, witnessing and being with us and holding us in her prayers. And she's going to offer the closing contemplation. And I'm just going to read a little bit from Beth's bio for you all. Elizabeth Anne Hin, the founding president of the White Rose Foundation, was conceived and born deeply awake and experienced death in infancy, from which she was brought back to life. Beth's life has been aware of attention to the sacred in assistance to the spiritual, moral, and humble developments of all beings, including her own. Beth has studied the world's spiritual traditions for over 4 decades. She was deeply mentored by many beloved elders. Through the White Rose Foundation, she has practiced her own contemplation and path, to date in 50 nations on all continents except Antarctica, offering lectures, classes, retreats, seminars, audio tapes and CDs, scholarships for youth, honoraria for spiritual elders, and spiritual leaders throughout the world, and service journeys also of educational, medical, and social support. You can find information about Beth's work at the whiterose.org website, and on facebook.com you could follow White Rose Foundation. Dear Beth, welcome.
Yeah, Fatima,
Welcome.
I think what I'd like us to do today is the thread of the mystery of the weaving of God is one of the great beauties. And how I met Simon Fatima through my beloved friends, Camille and Claire Haminsky. Just has been a continuum of that thread. And so through the day today, listening and being present with each of you, I had planned just in the inner contemplations of my own path over the last month or two, what I had thought we would talk about and how I do it in kind of a meditative way. But I found that there's been such argument in the world in recent years.
I'm so sorry, Beth, to interrupt. There's just a little bit of background shuffling. Is that near the microphone or something?
Probably this paper here.
Ah, okay. Yeah, thank you.
There's been such argument in the world that one of the main questions that's been brought to me in recent months has been people's conflict and confusion about how to deal with argument. And we seem to be at a global level of seeking what it is to be a human being and finding that as we engage our conversations at any level, the post office, the grocery store, the university, the church, the mosque, the synagogue, the temple, that there is a kind of abrasion of a pearl trying to take shape. It's astonishing to me during this pandemic how we've all been taken to a path of practice. And part of the compassion I have is for all of the people throughout our world who have very few resources and those who have very little practice of contemplation. Those first several months, I thought, what is it like for someone who's never been still or not asked themselves the deep questions? How are they coping with being inside? Or, I know people who were in tiny apartments in major cities where they were used to being out at cafes and at work, and they had to just be restricted at home, maybe with 3 other people in a tiny, tiny apartment, and yet they practiced. And there was very little looting and fighting and violence. And yet there seems to be this frustration of, well, then what do we do now? How do we go back? And my own work has engaged funerals for people who've died during this time online, or blessing of a newborn baby, or advising a pregnant woman how to try to take care of herself during her last months during this sort of remarkable time. My husband goes to work every day as a medical doctor, so he's in the midst of it, and his lab is one of the labs doing research on the vaccines. And then Blaine, with whom I've worked for 35 years, is in and out of the world every day. So these 2 men are walking in and out of my world, and I will counsel a family who has someone dying, and then I'll watch these vast movements in people's lives. And when I saw the arguments that were occurring in France and throughout the world this week, I found myself wanting to know how vulnerable our group would be. And what I found so exquisite today is the tenderness and courage of each woman, and that we are truly meeting in a safe space of resilience and also receptivity, and offering to open to the next moment intimately with one another. My teacher, Twyla Nitch, who was an Iroquois Seneca Oneida elder who adopted me at her request, she's no longer alive. She is from the area of the world where I grew up in the Finger Lakes of Western New York State, but I've told the story many times. She said to me, the challenge with the other cultures of the world right now is the women are not sitting in a circle together. They keep breaking the circle. And she said, in the Iroquois tradition, the women gather in a circle to pick the next male leader. They do not pick their own son. If one woman tries to pick her own son and he's a good leader, the circle of women will support this. If he is not an adequate leader, the circle of women will stand and include the mother, or the wife or the daughter or sister, but not give in to her wish to dominate through more of a male principle. She asked me that wherever I would be in the world, would I make sure that I presented to the women, could we please gather in a circle, as it were, and find our way together in prayer and then in practice and in life. And so what I found as I watched the arguments, I've spent a lot of time in southern France, and I was aware this past week, I was there years ago when there was a large attack, and people would cry. I speak French like a 12-year-old girl. And the French would talk to me in French about, why is this happening? Why is there such argument going on? And in this past week, I was aware that I had two events occur. One of them was I bought a small watercolor painting for a rabbi. And the woman who created it lives in France. She is Armenian and Jewish. And so if she were in certain parts of the world 100 years ago, she might have been persecuted for being Armenian. If she were in other parts of the world 70 years ago, she might have been persecuted for being Jewish. Now she's able to live in a freedom of her prayers and practices in Islam and Christianity and Judaism, and work with the religions of the world on calendars and paintings and just her own aesthetic appreciation of the beauty of life. And so this small piece she's sending to me is going to a rabbi, interestingly. So this conversation was occurring. And then there was an attack in Nice where I realized if I had walked into the church, I might be the woman who had been killed, because I've been in many of those churches. And I was aware, well, the woman who was killed was all of our mothers. She was all of us. And yet the man who killed her also had a mother. And each one of us has a mother. And I started dissembling what I was going to have us contemplate. And this is what I came to with our group, and especially through how the day has gone. I came to something called the Sidrat al-Muntaha, and I'm sorry, I don't speak Arabic, so the Sidrat al-Muntaha. It's this great tree, the lot tree. And for people who study religious traditions, we usually study the saints, the sages, the prophets, occasionally the women affiliated with them. Usually they're male figures historically, partly because we bring them forward, but also because we make the woman second often, but we also protect her in that. It's a double-edged conversation. Am I protecting my mother, or am I disregarding her as if she's nothing? Am I honoring her, or am I dishonoring her? And what I've been with all day is the distinct experience of almost each woman showing by her expression of herself with us how she has come in a forthright way to be present and state, this is who I am in God. It has been both difficult and exquisite for me to find this path. And I am on my path to the best of my humble, honored ability as a human being. And here we are, and where are we going? And each woman has revealed herself, or that self, to all of us, willingly seeking God in the light and the darkness that was so beautifully said by Rachel about that sense of the moon reflecting the light going into that deep darkness, or Fati, you talking about John of the Cross and his dark night of the soul. So what I found with the tree is what's happened historically. If we go to the Buddha, his mother was journeying, knowing he was coming. He came about 8 days early, and she held to a tree and gave birth to him, holding the tree as if it were a birthing stool or a laboring stool. Or I held a young woman years ago, and we walked through a room and then lay down in the bed, and she was about 20 years old, and it was her first child, and I just was with her like a godmother, right against her body as the midwife saw her through things. And she was unafraid. I was like the tree godmother for her. So the Buddha's mother, we know, died about 8 days after he was born, and her sister raised the boy. But you know, the space through which the child came also included a tree. When he sat to become enlightened, his last stage of that accomplishment was sitting beneath a tree. We call it a Bodhi tree. In the Bible, we have these pine trees. There's an apple or apricot tree in the Song of Songs. There are the olive trees of Gethsemane. And then we come to this idea of the tree in Islam, in the Quran, where the Archangel Gabriel takes the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, and can go as far as the lote tree, but the Archangel Gabriel can go no further. All human beings and all angels are only allowed to that tree of the outermost boundary, and they can't go further. And Muhammad goes on, and the 5 prayers of the day are given to him in that womb, right? That womb of God. And those prayers are born through that prophet. And they are born so that we together can find a pathway beyond anyone who would harm anyone. So my experience this week was, well, how I know Fatih and Saima, and Daniel besides Saima, and Daniel's mother and their different loved ones and extended families. There's a quality in that where every time you stated your Ray principles at the beginning of each session has been so eloquent and real and grounding. And I'm just going to read here what you came up with, the idea of calling yourselves Ray. She whose beautiful face could enslave a man, she whose haughtiness makes your heart tremble. How will you cope when she falls trembling in front of you? She from whose disdain your heart and soul bleed, how can they escape what has been made beautiful? She is not that kind of beloved most imagine. She is a ray of God. She is not just created, she is creative. So I feel that there's a quality, there's a principle, and that's from the Mathwani. It's chapter 1, verse 24, 21 to 24, 37. It's found in the book Love's Ripening, translated by Kubra Haminsky and A. Rizwani. So I feel what's happening is, as an older woman, I'm almost 70, and I find that in the younger women, there is a diligent existence that is self-evident, that you are fully in the next step of what society globally is encountering. And the ease and brutality of what beings like me have gone through to be able to have a day like today is part of what I experienced this week. I told Blaine before we gathered for this afternoon's sessions, I said, you know, it's interesting, it's moving so gracefully, the nature of how all of the women are heading. And I said, it's partly because the older women went through the labor that what you are all becoming can exist. So what I feel very, very deeply as a mystic and as a human being is the nature of the space or the state that Gabriel and Muhammad went to is where we all are right now. And I'm not trying to compare any of us to the prophets. And yet, each prophet came through the heart, soul, and womb of a mother. Did he not, or did she not? Why are any of you less than those mothers? You are the daughters and sisters and mothers and grandmothers and colleagues beside the mothers of the prophets. Therefore, it behooves us to represent the ray that Fatih and Saima have created, so that together, as a microcosm of the human race, we have the courage to be that living prayer. You know, Sugar, you've been that in the work you were speaking of at Stanford and the projects you've had before and what you were dealing with as a young woman and your concepts of God and your parents and listening to the Quran and going to the mosque. And Rachel, you were so eloquently that in all that you're doing. And so I believe that at a lesser time, we would be hitting against a ceiling and not being able to find our way through. But my experience as a mystic is that this incredible argument in the human race is like a tantrum of a child. Humanity is undergoing something because it cannot yet understand what is laboring to be born. Yet this group of human beings is right there at the opening to the wound. And beyond the opening to the wound, we're at the opening to the womb of God that's present at the Lot tree and the Bodhi tree and the olives of Gethsemane. And if we would live every moment the thread of that weaving, God will answer us. As a global conversation, as nations, as regions, in our religious discourses, in our social lives, in our families, in our intimate relationships of spouses and children and parents. And so I think if we let that contemplation be with us through the night tonight and into the day tomorrow, and then I know Camille and Pat McCabe, a woman stands shining, will be concluding in their contemplation tomorrow night, a Native American woman and a beloved Sufi woman who's been such a dear friend of mine. Camille and I have the joy of living where there isn't a space between the threads of our lives and God, which we do not trust. I don't mean that we're perfect, but it's undisturbed. The intimacy is undisturbed. The practice is so diligent for so many decades that there is a recognition in one another. Oh, we are walking side by side. We could sit at the tree and allow the prophet to go on into a space and trust the way that God would answer him or her. So if God is going to answer the mother of Muhammad or the daughter of Muhammad, then also she, he, that great one, God, would answer us. And it may appear in one of you, all of you, people all over the world, men and women, and non-binary human beings as well. And so when the treason, there's a lot of the argument right now is colonialism and this country versus this country, this language and these appropriations. And my experiences with many people from all over the world is there isn't anywhere I've been where people didn't take me in as their own kin. Right? I wouldn't speak their language. My body would be very different. Women in Burma would be amazed at how huge my body was. They would be so tiny. And they would want to touch my skin. And they had heard that there was hair on the bodies of non-Burmese women, and so they wanted to feel the white hairs on my arm. They were curious about the little moles on my face. Would it be all right if they would touch them? And then they would talk to me about, this is the vegetable you should get. It's in season right now. It's so lovely. So we would come together in a weaving of the sanctity of that day or evening or night, because I was allowed into the weaving of God of those women and those men, everywhere I have ever walked on the face of the earth. And so when people say, but this power did this, I go, well, we're speaking English. Yes, we are. Or we could be in a place where a tribal leader might speak a language and have me speak to him, and he would speak to the elder who spoke no English. And I could apologize. I'm sorry that I do not speak your language, one of maybe 40 or 50 or 60 language groups I've been around. And then an elder would say to me, you need a warmer jacket, the winter is so cold here. I wish we had wolverine skin to put around your face because it doesn't frost. And I would say, really? And they'd say, yes, it's the only fur that doesn't have any frost. So they would put it on the jackets of the men who were hunters so that they would have no frostbite on their face. Right? I would be taught this as if I were the granddaughter of Martha Neck, intimately, so that if I stayed in the far north, which I did not, but if I stayed there, I would know how to take care of a hunter, right? And the hunter's wife, and the hunter's daughter, and the grandmother, and myself. It would be entrusted. So most of the argument going on right now is about tribes thinking, you are other, you're not like me. You're not of God, you're not of my God. And I go, at the lote tree, or the olives of Gethsemane, or the Bodhi tree of the Buddha, or the rose of May, rose of Sharon, and the Song of Songs in the Old Testament, there is a quality of waiting and having something revealed that we both do and do not understand, yet we know. And when we embody it in an entrustment to God in one another, we are caretaking that which is holy, that in him which is holy, that in her which is holy. We can feel it when I talk about it. That in that which is holy. And that is our home. And when we share this together as holy family, the quality of the moon-like state Rachel was speaking of begins to become fulfilled and then emptied out again and fulfilled. And the female body knows this rhythm. And it knows, oh, we are pregnant with the era of this pearl of God, this ray of God. So when the great colonialist Richard Burton went to the Middle East years ago, and I studied him in graduate school, came across parts of the Middle East and down into Africa. And I would come into areas of Africa that are very unexplored and be working with tribes. And someone would say to me, Richard Burton came all the way down here. And I would say, well, it's interesting. It's interesting. So when Richard Burton came into Medina, he found that there was a lote tree there. And what he was most touched by was that the pilgrims would come and be given leaves and fruit from the tree to take home as blessing, right? Where was the tree planted? The tree was planted at the grave of Muhammad's daughter, not the grave of the prophet, at the grave of his daughter. That's what moved the Englishman. Isn't that interesting? See, to me, that's where the thread meets everything. So, where is each of those souls now? Where are each of we now? Where are each of us now? Well, if we are all meeting together at the lote tree and we pay attention to the idea of the angels, and I say many times, there are two principles that have been found in all of the traditional world religions. The only two principles they all share is the belief in angels and the golden rule. So if all of the historic traditions of our languages that have colonized the planet as faith or prayer or practice, whether they're repressed, or compressed and upsetting and repressive and confused, or whether they're able to be open enough in the books and practices that we can try to find that ray of God, if we are there calling upon God and the angels, and we have the faith and the actual practice in our bodies, as the woman we're speaking of, in our bodies to live at that tree, then the heart and womb and soul of the women of the prophets will be answered, as it has always been. We just didn't respect it enough to speak of it, or we were not understanding it, or we were desecrating it so the men could kind of conquer it like a warfare with a weapon. I'm the man. But whatever we were doing, I think it's time to put away the criticisms. They will be there at times, but if we come together and allow the fluency of this seeking of heaven coming through those realms that are where the prophet traveled, or Moses at the burning bush at Mount Sinai, where I was taken to visit. No one was going. It was right after 9/11. And the army took me with a man with a machine gun against his body. He stayed like less than 2 feet away from me because they'd been told that there would be an attempt on killing people at sacred sites in order to cause an international uproar. But the abbot had him go back and take me under the altar and then take me back to the descendant of the burning bush, to the tree or the shrub, right? And that area of St. Catherine's has never had a fight. Since the time of Moses, there's been no war there. The flame of God that is present there still burns, as it does in each of us. So to me, our contemplation is that we ask God to answer us, and we are attenuated to the state of the roots of the lote tree and all of these trees I'm speaking of. The firmament of its trunk, its branches, its buds and leaves and blossoms and fruit. And then all of a sudden what will happen is in one of us, some occurrence will be in our body or our heart or our mind, where we will know the generosity of moving in the mystery of those same states through which revelation was given to the saints and sages. And as women, we know the receptive principle. And then as we offer that as a gift back to God in each of our relationships, in each of our moments of our lives, we begin to be present with his or her or that great one's holiness, which is undisturbed and stronger than any of the arguments that are present in the day-to-day. They're just irrelevant. And then I want to close with, there's a poet named Sadi who lived, I believe, in the 14th century. And there's a famous dream where a man was very disturbed about his own faith, and he had a dream. And in the dream, he dreamt of an angel coming from heaven carrying flaming coins of light. And the man asked in the dream, what is happening? And he was told, oh, angels are bringing coins of light, made of light, to Sadi to thank him for the poem he's written for God. So this quality of revelation or reality that is the great state people are studying when they want to study realization or enlightenment, that would be constantly answered when you allow that state to be with you just living in your body at the base of the tree and letting God come to you with whatever it is he or she or that has as a purpose beyond all argument and violence, to know the essence, the nature of him or her or that great one. And I feel in my heart of hearts that this is one of the great pearls or flaming coins of light that is given to Camille and to Fatih and Saima and all of us. And I simply ask that we be graced with this and that we be protected and we be blessed and guided in all ways, and that we carry the humble dignity of our self-respect that has been so gorgeously spoken of by almost every woman today. It's just beautiful. So with that, I'm just going to say Amen. And let us go with this contemplation into the night tonight and ask that God answer us all and answer all of humanity and all of his creation. And invite his great angels and saints and sages to be with us. Amen.